A man in a suit stands in front of a screen showing shadowy figures and a shadowy car, his calm demeanor contrasting with the mystery presented in the news. A man in a suit stands on a city street, contemplating a serious issue depicted on a billboard about child abductions, while a car can be seen driving by in the background. The text highlights the challenges faced by women in emergency situations and highlights the urgent need for timely responses and solutions. There are a lot of rumors about organ trafficking linked to species extinction. The comments reveal a dark debate about the organ trade from China to Korea, intertwined with skepticism about police action and public concern. During an online discussion, one user questions the existence of the unusual rumors, while another expresses skepticism about the comments, revealing the local gossip circle. The character asks, "So you're saying the kidnappings aren't about money?" This simple question opens up a whole world of doubt and curiosity. A tense discussion ensues, with one man declaring, "That's right," and another pondering, "Usually kidnappings come with demands, but in this case, there were none." If the kidnappings were related to money, criminals would easily kidnap children, since they are much more vulnerable. A monochrome scene unfolds. Two figures sitting on a bed, staring at a blank television screen, holding a remote control. The woman, smiling confidently, announces the end of the relaxation session, calling on everyone to stop watching TV and start studying. The boy stands silently, his gaze fixed on something invisible, embodying a sense of contemplation, emphasized by his unkempt hair and casual clothing. A hand grabs the boy's hair, pulling him closer, and the boy's expression is one of surprise and concern as he hears the words, "Come on, son." The man stands still, addressing a child sitting on the floor, the tension thick in the air. He insists, "When your teacher speaks to you," as the child looks up. In a moment of hesitation, the young man scratches his head, pondering his answer, while the woman watches him with a barely noticeable smile. The woman with dark hair smiles and asks, "Sir, where are you going?" Her expression is open and demanding an answer. A character casually mentions a minor assignment in the Philippines, asking that someone else take care of the day's duties for him. A stern figure stands in front of a board, addressing two seated people. One child sits quietly, and a woman clasps her hands, expressing concern. The young man smiles confidently, speaks clearly. He nods and says that it is time for him to leave. There is a quiet laugh as the figurine playfully warns, "Do not insert," while a stern image of a rolling object draws attention. The young man casually advises Jin to listen more carefully to the teacher and try harder in his studies. There is a boy standing next to the woman, his gaze absent-minded and his posture tense. The woman presses her back against the door, listening intently to the insistent signal. The woman smiles and suggests activating the learning mode again. There is an open English book on the table surface, papers, and a small plate are scattered nearby. Two figures are discussing at a glass table. One of them mentions that the other's father is often on business trips. The boy with the disheveled hair lowers his head and hesitantly confirms that this happens sometimes. The woman confidently declares her intention to work together productively, waiting for the interlocutor's response. A woman asks about the value of the property, being interested in the place. The young man, thinking, quietly replies that the price is probably high. The girl casually reminds her interlocutor that his mother died 15 years ago and specifies the age of his father. The bare-chested figure thoughtfully recalls past dates, reflecting on them. The shadowed man asks if anyone understands the meaning of this date, leaving the question open. The girl, standing in silence, asks a question, expressing genuine interest. In the dim light, the boy is silent, his eyes hidden under his hair, lost in thoughts about his father. She asks to go to the toilet for a moment, and he agrees without objection. A voice in the hallway calls for hurrying, reminding that there is still much to do. A hammer wrapped in paper leans against a niche in the wall, its presence seeming ominous. In the silence, a question is heard about the incomprehensible sound, and the tension increases. The hand tightly clutches the homemade weapon, wrapped in bandages, and in the darkness there hovers a premonition of the inevitable. The calendar page has two dates highlighted, January 16th and April 25th, indicating an important upcoming event or deadline. A man kneels on a blood-stained floor, clutching a mop. A nearby couch stands out against the backdrop of the scene, suggesting a violent confrontation. The boy slips. His foot is pointed towards the viewer. The moment is tense, and the facial expression conveys the unexpectedness of the fall. A young man lies in bed, his eyes wide open, his breathing ragged, lost in thought. The young man lies without closing his eyes. Beads of sweat appear on his forehead, and uncertainty can be read in his gaze. A tall figure moves down a deserted street, hands in pockets, face hidden by unruly strands of hair. The advert for an English and math tutor lists a contact number and offers a salary of 500,000 won for tutoring twice a week. One character expresses disdain, calling another a little jerk, while the other stands with a phone, stunned by the sudden attack. A young man stands confidently, challenging an older man with a backpack, who mockingly remarks that his age gives him certain advantages. The man, maintaining his seriousness, firmly reminds that old age does not give the right to interfere in other people's affairs. A young man with a frowning look approaches an older man with a scraggly beard and asks him in a reserved manner to stop the conflict. On a busy sidewalk, several people are engaged in a tense conversation, debating who has the right to be in this place. One of the interlocutors notes that such a young man should not get involved with someone like her. An elderly man with gray, disheveled hair and a backpack angrily attacks a young man, accusing him of bad manners. In a tense conversation, one character asks, dumbfounded, if the other understands what it's like to be a parent. The other character, frustrated, demands clarity. One of the disputants angrily declares that he will destroy the other's homework, while the other tries to calm him down. The young man shouts insults, demanding attention, his voice filled with anger and desperation. The two characters exchange questions, discussing an intriguing story, emphasizing the atmosphere of mystery. The class is discussing the news of a missing girl. Someone notes that her disappearance happened nearby, and there is a sense of uneasiness in the air. In an empty hallway, two figures are engaged in a conversation. One man persistently asks questions, and the other agrees, hinting at something hidden. A sharp voice breaks the silence, shouting a rude exclamation, emphasizing the urgency of the moment. The woman, doubting, clarifies the veracity of what she heard, while her companion, holding a piece of paper in his hands, hides his emotions behind a mask of calm. In a casual conversation, a man encourages two young people to relax, playfully teasing them, while a third person watches from the sidelines. The confident interlocutor, grinning, asks a question about the likelihood of events developing, while simultaneously making a sharp remark about the appearance of the two women. Several people, fascinated by the spectacle outside the window, watch with undisguised interest. One of them exclaims in surprise, another laughs, reacting to the unexpected picture. During the discussion, one of the participants confidently states that the photos of the missing girls have appeared on all the websites, noting their attractiveness. His interlocutor listens attentively, becoming interested. A lone figure stands in the hallway, pondering the strange events of the past, until the silence is broken by a sudden, awkward pause. A man wearing glasses expresses disbelief as he ponders a news report that lacks evidence of violence, feeling confused by what he has heard. The tall man lifts his leg while his opponent, doubled over, winces in pain, letting out a muffled groan as he stumbles. One of the participants in the conversation persistently defends his point of view, while the other, worried, watches the development of the situation, hiding in internal conflict. The man, with a mischievous smile, casually brushes off the situation, letting out a long laugh, hinting at his frivolous attitude. The three walk down the corridor, their confident steps reflecting hidden tension and demonstrating the contrast in their characters. One of the characters challenges him to explain, while his interlocutor hesitates, looking uncertain and submissive. During the conversation, a warning of caution is given, followed by a sharp remark, turning the exchange of words into a tense dialogue. In a playful manner, one character warns his companion against excessive aggression, emphasizing the dynamics of a tense conversation. The young man covers his mouth with his hand to hide his smile, muttering incoherent apologies, while his subdued laughter betrays his carefree nature. Voices are heard in the corridor. Students are discussing something animatedly. A girl laughs, covering her mouth, and a boy nearby remains indifferent to the conversation. The young man looks down, thoughtfully analyzing the situation. His thoughts are reflected in the caption next to it. No wonder I didn't get the message. He sits with his chin propped up in his hand, staring out at the world outside the window, lost in thought. A dusty classroom appears, littered with old desks. The air is filled with an ominous warning of possible danger lurking in the shadows. The young man sits, his long hair hiding most of his face. He repeats the word under his breath, lost in thought, and rests his chin on his hand. Against the sky stands a figure holding a book, her face hidden in shadows, leaving a mystery for him alone. One man waits at the bottom of the stairs while the other stands frozen at the top, a moment of anticipation hanging between them. At school, every conversation is full of hidden meanings, and students navigate social traps like thickets. Manny Kim stands confidently at the top of the hierarchy, dominating those around him. The character maintains a firm posture, his gaze filled with determination, completely rejecting the value of others' opinions. Pen Han stands wary, his gaze betraying hidden excitement, and a shadow of worry flickers in his eyes. He does not attack openly, but the threat remains invisible and can appear at any moment. Tension dominates the scene. One figure remains in the foreground, while the other two exchange worried glances in the distance. One character gestures in frustration and accuses the other of cowardice for running away in the face of danger. Two men clash at a dumpster, one of them hesitating, and the other debating the consequences of physical superiority. A lone figure stares ahead, silhouetted against a scene filled with threats. Two figures near the school, standing with their backs to the school, watch a third person in the distance. One of them confidently points in her direction. One character makes an accusation, claiming that the other stole his wallet. The tension between them mounts. The boy, with his disheveled hair, clutches the fabric of his shirt and looks confused, his empty gaze hinting at deep uncertainty. A standoff ensues, with one of them wide-eyed and denying guilt, while the other grabs him tightly by the collar. One of the characters freezes, hiding his face in the shadows, but his voice, full of rage, breaks in response to the accusations. There is a scream, eyes wide open. The surroundings blur, emphasizing the tense moment. The conflict reaches its boiling point. The two come to blows, words become weapons, and the stakes rise with every passing moment. One figure abruptly orders a stop, while the other falls, feeling the breath of danger very close. The man stands, frowning, looking at his interlocutor. He sharply demands an explanation, his voice full of impatience. Sharp cries echo through the air, accompanied by loud footsteps and fussy movements. The figure lies motionless on the ground, beads of sweat reflected on her face in the semi-darkness. The words are spoken above her, adding to the sense of impending danger. He looks down, frowning, and with obvious irritation demands an explanation of what is happening. A silhouette emerges in the darkness. Someone's voice echoes through the space, filled with anxious doubt. In a hospital room, a figure sits up in bed, the crumpled sheets sliding down. A barely audible voice utters a short word as the IV drips steadily. The man turns around abruptly, his gaze insistent, demanding an answer to what happened. The doctor makes a diagnosis standing next to the motionless body. He reports the patient's critical condition, noting that the heart has almost failed. A man appears at the door, announcing who has come to help. A smiling girl stands next to him. A girl with long, dark hair raises her hand in a welcoming gesture and confidently states her name, with a slight note of playfulness in her voice. She maintains a confident smile, adding that she has the patience needed to deal with difficult situations. The man freezes, assessing what is happening. Two children stand next to him, and mysterious numbers flash above them. The phone abruptly breaks the silence. He glances at the screen, quickly explaining what he needs to answer. A vague figure remains in the shadows, and in the background one can hear the whispers of two children, interspersed with random words. One of the boys, his face bandaged, listens intently as the girl leans closer, sharing something quietly. With his back turned, the man briefly confirms the information in a telephone conversation, his gaze sliding over the reflection. John freezes, listening to his father's voice, who assures him that someone is already nearby. At that moment, a new figure appears from the darkness. The question hangs in the air, scattering into the silence in uncertain sounds, creating a sense of growing anxiety. He is delivering an urgent message, insisting on the exact time. His tone brooks no argument. In the darkness, the boy freezes, his eyes wide open. He utters a short word, barely audible, begging for salvation. The young girl looks forward, her eyes wide with sudden realization, her expression frozen in silence. Tensions rise between the two characters when one of them notices that the other is an exchange student named Ken. The other abruptly refuses to talk. The girl exclaims her shock and reminds him that she saved someone else, emphasizing the urgency of the situation. A man lying in bed shouts to leave. The woman approaches, and the man lingers at the door. The young girl turns her gaze to the man standing next to her, carefully watching his reaction. A young man with disheveled hair and a bandage on his cheek looks thoughtfully ahead. One character holds a hammer, the other watches him tensely, their gazes intersecting in confrontation. The girl rushes forward, her expression betraying the urgency of the situation. The figure with an anxious look prepares for the inevitable confrontation. The man extends his hand, clearly trying to convey something important. The figure's dark eyes flash with intensity and she smirks, throwing out an accusation. The teacher explains the topic of happiness to the students, calling for attentiveness. Whispers spread among the people. They recognize the figure in the shadows and wonder if he is Jin's father. Two people quietly discuss the unusual behavior of one of those around them. Two characters exchange words. One doubts, the other confirms, hinting at a problem related to the children. The man introduces himself as Dong-soo, Jin's father, attracting everyone's attention. There is silence in the classroom until a whisper is heard, attracting everyone's attention. A hand with chalk writes the word "now" on the board, and the word "knocking" appears next to it. The inscription "happiness" appears on the dark surface, emphasizing the significance of the word. In front of a board with the inscription "score," the figure asks the class a question about the meaning of happiness. A girl in class raises her hand earnestly, declaring her desire to earn a lot of money. The surrounding students listen attentively, amazed by her words. A young man with glasses stands by the window and reflects on his desire to enter a prestigious university, demonstrating his determination. One of the students confidently speaks of his intention to become famous, while another, standing behind, silently watches him. Against a dark background stands out the figure of a man in formal clothes, from whom comes a mysterious aura. The word "smile" appears next to him. The man claims that happiness is achievable, but warns that it comes at a price. There are murmurs of uncertainty in the classroom as students exchange glances and try to process what they have heard. The teacher grins, shrugs, and notes that this is hard to understand. Then he explains that happiness requires sacrifice. He argues that wealth inevitably leads to losses, because respect also comes at a price. The character states that the world is fair, implying that any acquisition entails certain consequences. One of the students calmly confirms that something is always lost in life, hinting at a deeper meaning in his words. The figure, with a slight smile, talks about different types of happiness that do not require any sacrifice. One of the characters raises his hand in a questioning gesture, while the word "kakue" appears next to him, expressing his confusion. A boy with disheveled hair closes his eyes, a bead of sweat slowly running down his face. A smile plays across his lips, and he chuckles softly, anticipating what lies ahead. A figure lurks in the darkness, its sinister gaze standing out from the shadows. Suddenly, a loud cry is heard. "He wanted!" One of the characters smiles kindly, speaking of devotion and care, embodying the concept of love. The voice utters words of gratitude for the rescue. The answer sounds short but succinct, emphasizing the significance of what happened. In the dim light of the room, one of the characters lies in bed, while the other stands nearby, discussing a girl who recently came by. The boy, lying on his bed, reflects on the day that has passed, and quietly thanks everyone for their efforts. In a modern setting, two people are talking. One of them laughs, assuring that everything is fine, and the other agrees, acknowledging how hard the work is. The man at the door gives a short order about the need to leave, adding a request to calm the other person down. He responds in a confident voice, assuring that he will remain calm, demonstrating firmness and trust. In front of the half-open door, the figure freezes for a moment, catching a faint sound that reinforces the feeling of an upcoming event. The man smirks slightly, his gaze giving off a hidden meaning, leaving a sense of mystery. In the room, one figure lies under the sheets, another stands motionless in the doorway, creating a tense moment of anticipation. Polished boots tap out a rhythm on the surface, each step emphasizing the decisiveness of the movements. The figure, cowering, half closes its eyes, its forehead covered in beads of sweat, its body seemingly frozen in immobility. Near the bed, he watches the person lying under the blanket, his posture expressing tense anticipation. The hand clutches the fabric, ready for action, as if trying to erase something invisible. The crumpled piece of paper contains an advert for a tutor, indicating that someone is in need of help with their studies. The ad specifies the subjects: English and mathematics, contact information, and the amount of payment for work twice a month. On the floor, amidst chaos and bloodstains, a man with a mop in his hand methodically cleans up. The character lowers his gaze, sweat runs down his face, the tension in his pose expresses a struggle with fatigue. The lifeless body is spread out on the floor, surrounded by dark marks. The caption highlights its agony: writhing and squirming. Two people are struggling, one pulling the other. Their movements are sharp and full of despair. The collision reaches a climax. The gaze is downcast, shadows hide the facial features, beads of sweat run down the cheeks, emphasizing the internal conflict. Against the darkness, a lone door remains closed, its presence suggesting a choice without the possibility of return. The sign above the door with the inscription, "Kindness, Service," attracts attention, revealing the theme of care and help. A figure emerges from the darkness with a wide smile, asking about the completion of the task assigned to him. A voice from the shadows sounds hoarse, demanding directions, causing everyone around to become wary. A figure appears on the horizon, eyes wide and grinning with concern, a tense voice filling the air, demanding an answer. A character with piercing eyes talks about a mission in the Philippines, his voice hinting at hidden intentions. A dark figure freezes in the doorway. Another one suddenly steps back, raising his hands in a defensive gesture, and a commanding order is heard. A man stands in front of a half-open door, a short order echoing through the space, increasing the tension of the moment. A pair of eyes stare through the slats, and behind them there is a sense of doubt, as if reality is impossible to accept. A figure looms over a prone man, a crumpled piece of paper in his hand. A muffled demand to name the culprit sounds. The young man stands in the doorway, smirks slightly, then turns around and reminds about the importance of listening to the teacher and trying hard. He remains motionless in the hallway. The woman next to him bows her head. Words of acceptance of his father's will barely escape his lips. A man appears in the doorway, the faint smile on his face betraying the hidden motives behind his calm demeanor. In an empty room, a lonely figure lies on a bed, his gaze directed at the ceiling, his thoughts leading him into the unknown. The man in the bed is motionless, his face blank, his voice quietly confessing the loss of his memories. The ceiling above seems stern, and below it a dark silhouette is lost in obsessive thoughts about a lost gaze. The boy sits up in bed, his hand pressed to his chest, the tangled wires nearby indicating a weakened state. Among the faceless figures, one stands out, discreetly indicating a glass eye that now replaces the lost one. The story reveals the physical truth. Artificial valves in the heart, metal plates in the joints. A man stands frozen in the shadows, his eyes hidden by a bandage, his voice discreetly declaring his status, which those around him call a disabled child. A lonely figure stands by the IV drip, the silence broken by a confession. His mother died when he was still a child. The man leans forward in the shadows, his voice hinting at a complicated family history. He leans closer, a smile spreading across his face, his voice emphasizing that this is his only blood relative standing before him. The boy with the bandaged head stares into space, his expression unreadable, his thoughts whirling in his head. The character sits solemnly, beads of sweat appearing on his forehead, emphasizing a moment of realization or anxiety, ending with a drawn-out, humble, "Of course." A dark figure looms, grinning maniacally and commanding, "Use your power!" There is a sinister truth beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered. The character's eyes reflect deep understanding. Despite the surrounding silence, an intuition awakens within him, capturing an unspoken truth. A figure shrouded in darkness peers out through it, causing a feeling of fear and confusion, and in response, an obsessive phrase is heard. Something is wrong here. The figure stands in the shadows, marked by streaks of darkness, representing silence and unspoken words. The tension of a missed connection hangs heavy in the air. The character stands with his head thrown back, tears streaming down his face, overcome with despair, struggling with feelings of hopelessness and vulnerability. The ghostly figure grins eerily, eyes wide and unsettling, hinting at a strange uneasiness. The text below reads, "I don't feel sick anymore." There are two figures standing in the room. One, upright and confident, asks, "So, who is in the meeting now?" The other, hunched over and withdrawn, is silent. The man smiles softly, stating, "Someone has to be." His companion counters, in a straightforward tone, "Let's be honest." The conversation unfolds with a hint of sincerity. The boy ponders his choice, his gaze fixed, remembering his classmate. Ruthless decisions loom in his head, tangible but disturbing. The man leans over with a sly smile and casually states, "Don't worry, just say the girl's name." His tone suggests confidence and mischief. The boy sits quietly, looking down, troubled by thoughts of isolation, and quietly says, "There is no one," expressing his loneliness in the emptiness around him. The man asks with a slight grin, "Really?" The atmosphere changes when the other replies, "Well then," marking a turning point between them. A man recalls a moment from the past, saying that he once saw a charming girl passing by, hinting at nostalgic feelings. The man smirks, his gaze fixed forward as he speaks with confidence about someone, his hands clutching something tightly. The atmosphere is charged with curiosity. A boy with dark hair and a mysterious demeanor stares intently, saying the words, "Your school uniform." His gaze piercing the air with unsettling energy. A pair of hands clutch a crumpled piece of paper, revealing the emotions hidden beneath. The text hints at a memory, offering a story behind the outfit and the connection. The man clutches a crumpled piece of paper and says succinctly, "Your school uniform." His expression suggests concern or urgency. The boy hesitates, looking away, a bead of sweat running down his forehead. "So, your new… well, what is it?" he stutters, uncertainty hanging in the air. In a dimly lit room, one character sits on a bed while another, dressed in a formal suit, stands next to him and addresses him curiously. The man, wearing a collared shirt and tie, hesitates as he speaks, suggesting a comparison between someone in the room and another person. In a dimly lit room, a boy sits on a bed, full of curiosity and anxiety at the same time, and next to him stands a man, pondering the disturbing similarities between them. She's an exchange student who asks him with a smirk, "Saving you?" To which he replies with a thoughtful smirk. He sat there casually, letting the tension hang in the air. "Of course not," he replied, his voice even and unwavering. The man stares, his expression thoughtful. He asks, "Really?" evoking curiosity and engagement, inviting an answer that hangs in the air. The young man looks worried, looks away, his hair is disheveled, and the tense silence is interrupted by a single ellipsis. In a dimly lit room, a determined figure stands, resolutely declaring his willingness to save another person, as an ominous sound of a heavy thud is heard. A young man sits silently, his disheveled hair casting shadows across his impassive face, while a text bubble reads, "You can go home today." A man turns slightly and asks someone to tell him what he is looking forward to the next day at school, emphasizing the importance of looking for something or someone. A mysterious figure with long black hair and a height of about 160 centimeters attracts attention, while another character in a red cap highlights their distinctive features. The boy looks down, his face dark with realization, and whispers the terrifying truth. "My father is a murderer." The figure stands with its back to him, contemplating the exchange. "Let me know if you need money," one voice states, while another mutters, "I'd better get back to work." A child stands near a bench, looking at a woman absorbed in reading. "I lost my dad," he says, attracting her attention with concern. The woman leans down, smiling widely, and gently ruffles the boy's hair, soothing him with words of help as the boy looks at her shyly. The figure stands with his hand raised in a playful gesture, a worried smile etched on his face, and he remembers. That girl was so kind. At the checkpoint, uniformed officers stand nearby while one of them inspects the car, declaring the need for a quick check. The driver leans forward, his eyes urgent, asking the attendant to serve him faster. The attendant looks puzzled, taken aback by the request. The picture shows the boy looking out of the car window with his face downcast and quietly expressing concern for his son. A police officer is talking to a driver, stating that there have been a lot of murders in the area recently, hence the random checks. The driver looks worried as they listen. A voice calls out to someone to leave, while another responds with thanks, creating a lively exchange amid the hustle and bustle. In the dimly lit car, the man grins confidently, testing the possibility of his plan. Behind him, the boy fidgets, unable to find the right words. He sits alone, clutching the book in his sweat-slicked palms. The lines of text on the pages seem to hide the heavy secrets it carries. The road ahead, framed by mountains, stretches into the distance, and a sign appears next to it, emphasizing the importance of having a child along the way. A dumbbell hangs on the wall, symbolizing strength. A folding chair stands just below, as if ready to offer rest. Clicks in the air indicate mechanical repetition of actions. The cursor hovers over the green Buy Y button, signaling the need for a choice, raising questions about the upcoming purchase. The figure is bent over, hiding its face between the shelves of books, words trembling before its eyes, warning of the danger and hopelessness of the situation. A lonely shadow lies on the floor, silently counting something invisible. The space around remains empty, leaving only traces of the morning chaos. The man strains, struggling to rise in yet another push-up. Drops of sweat fall down, and his lips mechanically count. 15! Dark hair falls on skin damp with tension. Details emphasize the moment of struggle and concentration. The girl straightens up, assessing her height, her dark locks framing her face. In her school uniform, she pauses in thought. The figure squats, preparing for the exercise. The number 17 flickers above, recording each repetition. Someone's gaze falls on a backpack sticker with a character in a red hat. Curiosity prompts a discussion. The figure stands in brown slippers with white socks. The shoes stand out, drawing attention to the details of the appearance. In a tense pose, the body struggles with the load. Beads of sweat trickle down. The number 18 looms nearby, marking the limit of endurance. The man, standing with his back to her, considers his next step. A suggestion flashes through his mind to let her know if he needs money. Leaning forward, someone breathes heavily, aware of their despair. One word is heard in their voice: money. A hunched figure sits on the floor, lips barely audible in a whisper of disappointment. Outside the windows, a gloomy cityscape spreads out. In the semi-dark room, the character quietly exhales, thinking about the fruitless search. It seems to him that everything is too complicated. A young shadow stands, eyes wide, dark hair falling down the side of his face, eerie words flickering in the air, adding to the tension of the moment. In a moment of panic, the gaze becomes empty, and the breathing becomes ragged. Sweat runs down, emphasizing the internal struggle that is playing out against the dark background. The jagged letters of the ominous text, Tudim Tudym, appear in the background of the scene, hinting at tension and an inevitable clash. A man stands in an empty room, gesturing towards an invisible figure, waiting for a silent response, and continues to stare into space. In a dimly lit hallway, a young boy stands opposite a serious man, their gazes meeting in oppressive silence. The darkened figure silently asks about training, its posture suggesting an expectation of an answer. The son tests his strength against the old man in arm wrestling, their hands clasped in a tense duel. At the table, two men compete in arm wrestling, causing a lively reaction from the crowd. The character smirks, throwing out a humorous phrase, a teasing glint in his gaze, two hands clasped tightly, signaling the beginning of a difficult duel. In the refrigerator, there are neat rows of jars with symbols and numbers, and a sense of mystery hangs in the air, accompanied by the sound of ZVYAK. A dark-haired figure stares, asking an unexpected but simple question about dinner. A man stands at the door, holding a device in his hands, about to speak. A meeting is scheduled for Mikan, who has just received a job, and he is reminded of the need to prepare. The dark-haired boy watches silently, his gaze uncertain as he ponders someone's presence. The man turns around and firmly points out so that there is no confusion. The family is engaged in animated conversation at the dinner table, one brother praising the other for his achievements. The man stops the conversation, switching attention from business to lighter topics. The characters continue their conversation. One asks what the other does, and the other offers to pour tea for the grandfather. One hand pours liquid into a cup, the other receives it, accompanying this gesture with words of gratitude. The man smiles, noticing a consistency in someone's appearance, to which the woman playfully retorts, teasing his gullibility. A woman with long hair looks closely, noting how quickly someone has grown up. A man stands in the shadows and smirks as he recalls recent events. He mockingly reminds another of his recent dismissal from a large company. The boy, recalling the past, smiles and notes that his interlocutor was smart even in childhood. His words remain unanswered. The woman thanks the man, calling him Uncle Don. He smiles slightly, creating a light and friendly moment. The father, pointing out the difference between his son and the other boy, teases him by noting that the other boy does not have a tendency to be a bore. The man looks at the boy with warmth, expressing gratitude for the man he has become. Their casual conversation is accompanied by light laughter. A playful exchange ensues, with one character attempting to reassure the other, receiving a lighthearted comment in return. The man is surprised to see how much John has grown, and there is a hint of nostalgia in the moment. A father assures the other parent that their child is kind and decent. In response, he receives a humorous remark that turns the conversation into light conversation. Two interlocutors laugh while discussing their similar appearance. One of them playfully emphasizes the maturity of both. Jokes arise in the conversation, causing both to laugh and feel in a pleasant mood. The man turns to the boy, asking about his future plans. He emphasizes that important decisions should be made in advance to avoid unnecessary competition. During the conversation, the man jokes about aging, noting that self-care becomes mandatory if you want to maintain your previous appearance. Around a table, a group of people discuss how strength and size change over time, sharing personal observations. A figure with tousled dark hair peers intently at his interlocutor, one eye slightly closed, and clarifies what he means. A man smiles and talks about physical development in high school, emphasizing the importance of playing sports. The young man, standing confidently, casually remarks that no matter how much effort they put in, age still takes its toll. The two characters exchange lighthearted banter, one of them grinningly trying to encourage the other, receiving a playful response in return. A character with a partially hidden face laughs, expressing doubt in what he heard. A man with a friendly smile suggests that they have an arm wrestling competition between father and son. One raises his hand, claiming that he has no strength, but the other intervenes, urging that youth should not be given up so easily. He fell silent. Sweat appeared on his forehead. His eyes widened. He talked too much, but did not say a word. Mike, shocked by what he heard, quickly agrees and begins to clear the table, which is littered with dishes. And Jin hears a warning not to give in just because of family ties. The urgency of these words makes him think. The character admits with a vague smile that he doesn't know who to bet on, making it clear that the decision is not easy for him. The man smirks, confident in his guess about the victory of a certain dawn, while the woman watches him silently, two hands clasped tightly, signaling the start of the fight. The score is approaching the end, and the tension is growing with each passing moment. In the midst of the fight, the young man desperately resists, their arms tense, each striving for victory. The arm wrestling match continues, with one man holding his own against the other's unexpected strength, and the spectator watching closely to see the outcome. The figure, trembling with tension, utters a determined desire to win at least once, demonstrating its desire. A confident man approaches, firmly declaring his readiness to face any difficulties. The figure smirks, assessing the situation mockingly, with a hint of hidden threat in his voice. A figure with a wide smile and shining eyes questions the sudden change in strength in his opponent. The man points defiantly at what is happening, reminding how far away victory still is. He chuckles nervously as he watches his interlocutor, whose smile makes their conversation about power less tense. The boy with the tousled hair smirks and advises Ain to start training, surprised by his weakness. A piercing gaze accompanies the phrase about the hotel, leaving behind a feeling of something left unsaid. The thought that he was never considered a son flashes through his mind. The memory of how he was always looked after becomes stronger in his mind. The man is perplexed while the woman actively explains the situation with a person who can't even drink a soda without supervision. A sudden revelation makes him aware of the impending threat, changing his perception of what is happening. The man leaned casually against the wall, watching the heated discussion between the other two. One of them was questioning the other's knowledge, causing confusion and tension. One of the disputants widened his eyes in surprise and exclaimed in disbelief. The other responded by grabbing him by the head, increasing the tension of the moment. A figure stood in the shadows, her voice steady but alarmed. He cursed, realizing that the situation might have been different if one of them had survived. One of the participants in the conflict strongly warned the other, making it clear that acting alone would lead to death. One of the men dismissed the conversation indifferently, while the other desperately tried to get his attention, insisting on the seriousness of the situation. In the dimly lit room, one of them was lost in thought, while the other kept his distance, lost in his thoughts. One man leaned closer, demanding an explanation. The other, stunned, hesitated before answering uncertainly. The man, feeling remorse, begged persistently, vowing never to harm others again. The figure leaned over slightly, a smirk on its lips, then slowly released the smoke, letting the words dissolve into the air. The two men continued their conversation, one pointing towards the door, while the other, hidden in the shadows, listened attentively, without showing any unnecessary emotion. Three people stood in a minimalist room. One, holding a cigarette, smirked. The second adjusted his glasses, and the third, dressed in casual clothes, spoke sharply. The young man stood breathing heavily opposite his opponent, who held a stick, and their squabble became increasingly heated. One man, casually rolling a cigarette, smiled, thinking out loud about his irregular heartbeat, as if playing with the situation. The two continued their conversation, one holding a cigarette with a confident grin, the other trying to clarify the name, clearly confused. The man asked someone's name, but the other person hesitated, answering uncertainly, leaving a feeling of tense anticipation in the air. One of them teased the other mockingly, making fun of the unusual name while those around him shared the moment. In the ensuing conversation, one man, playing with a cigarette in his hand, turned to another. The other, surprised, responded hesitantly. The teacher, standing in the light falling from the window, spoke with disappointment about the missed lesson, not hiding his displeasure. The man leaned forward confidently, a cigarette clamped between his lips, and his piercing gaze demandingly directed at his interlocutor, expecting an explanation about yesterday. The boy with disheveled hair looked blankly, his one visible eye expressing complete bewilderment at what he had heard. Tension fills the room as the cigarette slips from the man's fingers. The onlooker's eyes widen, silently questioning the unexpected turn of events. The man smiles at the child, laughing heartily, and they share a moment of playfulness and joy. In a dimly lit room, a tall man leans toward a younger man, displaying a wide smile and confident intent. The trio are engaged in animated conversation, one man ruffling the other's hair while onlookers assess the proceedings with obvious intrigue. The character leans in and whispers a command, creating tension. The man demands that the other one kneel down and apologize to Mr. Cool, emphasizing the mocking tone. The man raises his hand, trying to understand the confusing situation. In a brightly lit setting, two men discuss a plan, one proposing it with confidence and the other hesitating. The hand grabs the head with force, accompanied by a sharp sound of impact. The character acknowledges the act committed, expressing remorse and a desire to apologize. One figure lies down on the ground, under the power of another, who demands that it say certain words. A man, hands clasped on his head, begs for forgiveness, while another shouts out accusations for yesterday's actions. The figure approaches, stumbling as he tries to apologize, and a contrasting voice insists that it won't happen again. The man leans over slightly, skeptically assessing his interlocutor's words and demanding that he repeat them. The man looks at his companion with distrust, questioning the situation. The character peers through the bars in surprise, noticing an unexpected turn of events. The voice demands that the man get up and bring bread and milk, while the others watch. The figure firmly states that he will buy food and return immediately. Someone hurries away, and another figure from the shadows asks what is happening, directing attention to Manny. The man in the vest confidently claims that he sees the situation more clearly than those around him. The man with the sharp eyes asks questions, his tone creating hidden tension, hinting at deep-seated fears. In the conversation, one of the interlocutors, looking puzzled, asks about the purpose of their discussion, but the other confidently states that they did not have fear at school. Two men stand opposite each other, their interaction tense. One demands an explanation, the other asks for clarification on what exactly happened. One of them quietly says a few words, then decisively changes his mind, leaving the answer uncertain. In the distance, a group of people can be seen, their figures standing out sharply against the backdrop of the city, creating a menacing picture. One of the figures looks warily over her shoulder, her posture expressing a hidden threat. A man walks along a deserted street, his steps sounding rhythmically in the emptiness of the night city. A silhouette is visible in the darkness, a twisted smile on his face hinting at ulterior motives. Beneath him, the words, "I live with the devil," stand out boldly. The girl tells her father that she left him some food on the table, and then quickly adds that it's time to go to school. The child, attracting the parents' attention, asks questions about school, while the adult continues his work in the kitchen. There is a bowl of rice and a spoon on the table, someone points to it, emphasizing its presence. The old man looks at the porridge with irritation, and next to him a young girl sits in silence. The older a person gets, the more he resembles a child. He is forced to eat porridge because he no longer has teeth. Someone quickly gets ready, hastily exclaiming about their lateness. The sound of footsteps fills the space. The girl moves forward confidently, announcing that today is her first day at a new school. A schoolgirl shares her anxiety about her first day, but her friend points out that something scary awaits her. A silhouette appears against the sky, and words about his beauty come from the figure's mouth. The girl with the backpack stands confidently, declaring that she feels no fear. The man sits alone, his gaze expressing an internal struggle. A violent confrontation erupts in the alley, one man looming over the other, their screams echoing in the narrow space. The girl pounces on the boy, causing him to stagger back while another figure remains lying on the ground. The student justifies himself by explaining that he was looking for a toilet and was in a hurry to get to school without even having time to use it. The man in glasses, changing from confusion to alarm, tries to clarify whether someone really was talking about a toilet. One girl confronts the other, questioning her cruelty towards her friend, which escalates tensions between them. The girl points to the boy, who is apparently unconscious, while the other watches the scene, unsure of what to do. Amidst the chaos, a character calls for another to rise, focusing on the glass. The figure, with hidden facial features, tries to clarify whether a sharp sound was actually heard, showing curiosity and skepticism. A girl with long hair, holding a spoon, ponders her answer, while a boy next to her remains silent, leaving unspoken words in the air. The dark-haired girl is interested in the story of the glass eye, her curiosity underscoring the significance of the story. The shaggy-haired figure remains silent, as the question of whether someone called another character glass eye yesterday hangs in the air. Two characters sit next to each other, one hesitating while the other gently reminds that sharing is not necessary. One of them stands with his eyes downcast, wiping sweat from his forehead, thinking about the cool weather. The character, holding a can of preserves labeled 51, persistently asks whether it is worth eating, causing doubt in the interlocutor. One character, addressing another, reminds him that he is lucky to have been saved, and doubts whether he will be able to pay with his bank account. An argument ensues, with one character declaring that a tub of ice cream is all the other is worth, earning an irritated protest. The girl with long dark hair looks on with interest, trying to figure out what happened yesterday. A boy and a girl sit silently on a blue surface, while the surrounding area is an empty playground with broken equipment. A misunderstanding arises when one character assumes that he is being considered a purse thief. The dark-haired girl touches her lips with her finger, casually asking about the other's irritation while continuing to enjoy her snack. One of the characters, looking intently, asks a direct question, clearly preparing for a lively exchange of opinions. The character is deep in thought, expressing a desire for action or conversation. In the room, a girl holding a spoon looks at her interlocutor, questioning their attitude towards her father. She watches his face and decides that she is right, as silence fills the space. In an alley, one man doubts another's words about their father's visit to the hospital. He hesitates before expressing concern for the man heading to the hospital. The girl wonders why he avoids meeting her father or teacher. The man in glasses, smiling reservedly, addresses Ken with notes of sincerity in his voice. A man in a wheelchair expresses his regret, while a child nearby tries to comprehend his words. The girl, clutching the toy, asks questions, trying to understand the reasons for leaving. A man with glasses recognizes someone and, surprised, calls him father. The girl hesitates, admitting that she finds it difficult to imagine her father differently. The boy smirks as he comments on his father's oddities, while another voice remarks that he is incredibly lucky. Someone demands to stop this nonsense and show respect to the father while there is still a chance. One character quips at his father's oddity, while another questions whether it's really luck. Two people stand opposite each other. One is surprised, the other is trying to find an explanation for what is happening. She insists on respect for her father with abruptness, leaving no room for objections. The figure bends over, looking down intently, emphasizing the seriousness of the moment. The girl recalls events where someone clearly showed concern for her on the road. In his hands is a crumpled leaflet with an announcement about the search for a tutor in English and mathematics, indicating an urgent need for help. One of those present notes, with a grin, that she is indeed interfering in matters that are none of her business, highlighting hidden conflicts. The girl confidently claims that the other knows nothing, demonstrating her knowledge to an invisible audience. The character expresses doubt in the value of other people's actions with a smile, demonstrating disdain for the shortcomings of others. A young girl, lost in thought, playfully touches her lips with her finger. Her behavior hints at her upbringing in a wealthy family. The figure in the shadows, head down, reflects on someone else's courage to comment on personal matters, especially those concerning family. A young man, sitting alone, lets his long hair cover his eyes, his thoughts lost in contemplation of his surroundings. A bald man expresses his opinion about the disrespect of youth towards elders, mentally expressing his indignation. On a train, a young man lounges back on his seat, while an older man standing next to him smirks and talks about the difference between age and health. The old man mockingly notes that the education system is responsible for people's ignorance and inability to learn. They can visit a tutor and learn English words, but they still won't be able to understand their meaning. In a crowded train car, one man loudly complains about modern youth, while another quietly reflects on their behavior. The young man leans towards his older interlocutor and teases him with a grin, asking if he wants to feel young again. The character questions the intentions of another, suggesting that one considers one's own manners before judging another's shortcomings. The elderly man continues to complain about the upbringing of modern children, emphasizing their lack of due respect. A man in a vest, holding a bag in his hands, casually remarks about the older generation, accompanying his words with confidence in his observations. A tall man stands in the doorway with a cigarette, while a smaller figure opposite him stands frozen in confusion. One of the characters hesitantly says a few words amidst the surrounding noise, revealing his doubts. One listens intently, reflecting on the role of his father, while the other shares important information about the tower and the bridge. In a dimly lit train car, two people are talking. One is leaning against a post, the other is listening intently. Soon, a reminder comes that their father's companies are competing. One of the men, smirking, notes that he didn't even notice the competition because his interlocutor is constantly eating something. He wonders why he looks so weak for a major. The young man with disheveled hair sits in silence and dismissively interrupts the conversation, noting that it does not concern him. The man speaks with a slight smile about class differences, claiming that they belong to the same social class. The boy sits silently, his gaze downcast, while a voice nearby questions his presence, suggesting that his gloomy appearance is disturbing those around him. A disheveled boy stands confused as he looks at the man in front of him. He questions their confidence, while the other man points out their differences. Someone leans closer with a smirk, hinting at the presence of an outside observer and suggesting that they are being watched. The man raises his hand in an apologetic gesture, explaining that he had made a misunderstanding. On the contrary, the boy cuts him off with a sharp refusal, demanding that he stop. In a dimly lit room, a figure leans forward with a smug smile, claiming that no one can overhear them, before mockingly calling the other person a coward. A mocking smile plays across his lips as he notices his interlocutor repeating the same mistakes, teasing him with his observation. The man, with his hair combed back, confidently raises his hand, asking if anyone has time. In the gym, two people hit heavy bags, their punches ringing out rhythmically as a trainer watches their technique closely. A man ponders the development of the hall, while an empty bench awaits a new visitor. In a semi-dark room, two people sit silently. One, with an impressive figure, notices that no one comes in here, and the other listens silently to his words. The guy, hiding behind dark bangs, asks if his interlocutor really likes working out. The young man takes a long swig from the bottle, and beads of sweat on his skin indicate the effort he has put in. A confirmation is heard off-screen. The heir to a wealthy family easily displays his high grades and composure, presenting himself as the epitome of a golden boy. The character looks on indifferently, conveying both irritation and detachment, while the text hints at his reputation as a troublemaker. The man grins, admitting he's completely soaked from his workout, and suggests they take a break over a drink. His companion listens attentively. Two figures converse at sunset. One of them grins as he looks forward to rest, while the other remains indifferent to the proposal. The guy with shaggy hair claims that he is fine, emphasizing his indifference. The man, with a slight smile, confidently confirms his condition and remains calm and relaxed in the dialogue. The two part ways in a dark alley. One waves goodbye, and the other remembers how he once pretended not to know him at school. The figure stands with its back to an invisible interlocutor, threatening to find him if necessary. One of the characters stares ahead, shouting out his desire to become significant, stating his goal with determination. The tall man bursts out laughing, his voice drowning out the voice of the person standing opposite him, who remains silent. Two characters stand opposite each other. One asks questions, and the other smirks and claims that he will become stronger. One of them smirks playfully, commenting on what is happening with a mocking tone, as if it were a scene from a school comic book. The larger figure grabs his opponent by the shirt, creating a palpable tension in their confrontation. One character leans closer, making a stern demand, emphasizing the seriousness of the situation with his piercing gaze. One of them nudges the other slightly, breaking the tension, sarcastically reminding him that their friendship is not so obvious. The man with the bright eyes exclaims sharply that he has been left behind, comparing himself to an abandoned dog. A figure with sharp features warns not to make him repeat himself, and the word "frost" appears next to him, reinforcing his threat. The character smirks, hinting at his foresight of the situation, then with slight contempt calls the interlocutor abnormal. One of them remarks with a grin that there is some kind of power hidden in his interlocutor, leaving the sentence unfinished, as if implying something more. The speaker reflects on the meaning of happiness, arguing that wealth only increases desires and creates a balance between good and bad luck. The man confidently declares that his goal is charity, trying to suppress unnecessary feelings. The director, known for his dedication to charity, has expressed doubts about the direction of the next donations. On the table is a glass of ice-cold drink with a straw, and above it are words quoting a Bible verse about sleeping youth. The speaker talks about the dreams of young people, emphasizing their struggle to realize their aspirations. He announces his intention to support education and launch a school bus system. The woman notes the rarity of such exceptional individuals in their country. One of the characters quietly states that he is sure that there are many such people, if one looks closely. The dialogue continues, presumably leading to the conclusion of the interview or discussion. A woman suggests writing an article about someone's elegant style, emphasizing his height and attractiveness. The man grins and notes with a slight mockery that if he were introduced as a stylist, he would be willing to consider this option. The woman, smiling, agrees that she should hurry up and find the right person. Clutched in her hands is a registration card with the name Hyun Young Yan and the date of birth 1991. The question arises about her age. In the shadows, a silhouette stares at the object in its hands, completely focused on its thoughts. The woman, arms crossed over her chest, calmly apologizes for the wait, remaining polite and confident. The man, with a slight smirk, teases the woman, speaking about her with casual confidence. A man with a firm expression interrupts his interlocutor, warning him of the need to listen, adding harshness to his voice. He leans forward with a sly smile, confidently declaring that he knew about his interlocutor's strangeness. The character leans closer, noting that the interlocutor has potential, his words sounding with a hint of a deeper meaning. When thinking, a person thinks about happiness, trying to find a balance between wealth and the inevitable consequences of success. The character talks about his involvement in charity, expressing a desire to understand his motives. The woman asks questions about the field of donation, showing a keen interest in the topic. On the table stands a glass with a pale drink and ice. Next to it is a signature reminiscent of a biblical quote about the influence of youth drunkenness on the future. Many young people have dreams but face difficulties. One person thinks about sponsoring their education and creating school buses. The woman, speaking confidently, notes that she is dealing with an outstanding person, and then expresses surprise that such people still exist in the country. The character claims that he is Polish, adding that there are many like him. In a dimly lit cafe, two people sit at a small table, discussing something important, holding drinks in their hands. A woman smiles as she discusses an article about a man's elegant style, noting his height and beauty. The man smirks, hinting that if he is introduced as a stylist, he will consider the offer, and accompanies his words with a light laugh. The woman, remaining confident, announces her intention to find the right person as soon as possible. Holding a cigarette, she calmly states that the situation is not a joke. Then she adds that the test has been passed before, emphasizing the severity of the experience. One person demands an answer, while the other remains silent, not knowing how to respond. The girl with long dark hair looks down and hesitantly tries to find the words to address her boss. The woman points out the need for an immediate solution, making it clear that if the listener does not take action, someone else will. In search of a quick buck, she considers odd jobs or takes risks in the hope of winning. The figure confidently states that delay is unacceptable, emphasizing the need for immediate action. The man ponders the situation, promising to return to the issue later in the week. A heated argument ensues, as one speaker makes harsh comments, and the other demands immediate attention. Someone is standing with a bag and a pencil in his hand, with the inscription "Het" visible nearby. The motionless figure reflects on the hopelessness of existence, claiming that there is no suitable work for her. Thoughts fill the mind. All work is the same. If you just close your eyes, you can. The girl looks at the sunset, allowing a moment of confidence to fill her mind. One character shouts words loudly, and another responds with disbelief, creating a lively exchange of lines. In front of a punching bag, one man expresses disappointment in the power of his punch, raising doubts about his level of training. The figure leans over, breathing heavily, and then asks hesitantly if they will continue. The man notes with interest his interlocutor's smoking habit, pointing out his choice of light cigarettes. Two figures stand side by side, one leaning closer in irritation, the other remaining lost in his own thoughts. One man offers to repeat the blow, his confidence contrasting with his inner reflection on the technique of the movement. The boy, covering part of his face with his hair, stutters and talks about the possible danger of another person. His haggard but determined gaze betrayed the hidden strength lurking beneath the surface of his despair. The tall man stood next to the punching bag, encouraging his shorter partner and asking him to try again. A warning to watch your fists rang out in the semi-darkness. Another one responded sharply, expressing displeasure at the unexpected observer. He frowned and stared at his phone screen, noting with irritation that he had received another message from the girl. The thought of the contradiction haunted him, It was too manly for him, but at the same time they regularly offered him money. Hesitation permeated every movement as he pondered, asking himself a vague but troubling question. Confused, he stared ahead, unable to comprehend what was happening. His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden question. This? The boy, not hiding his curiosity, asked what the other one did with girls for money. In response, he only heard an indifferent question about whether he really took it seriously. The figure leaned closer, grinning, and made an inviting sentence that was tinged with a hint of arrogance. Leaning against the wall in the semi-shade, the man in the cap quietly asked if his interlocutor was going to pay for yesterday's goods. The tall man in the green jacket didn't move, and the one standing next to him grinned, making it clear that they had no intention of paying. Curiosity got the better of him. One man asked a disturbing question about another man's ability to easily obtain female organs. Watching his interlocutor with narrowed eyes, the figure noted with a grin his ability to work, while avoiding revealing his affiliation with any organization. A shadowy figure under a dark cap asked a sharp question, emphasizing the tension of the situation. With a barely noticeable smile, the man assured his interlocutor that there were no problems, adding that they were raking in money by the shovelful, and such fresh finds were rare. The figure's half-hidden face leaned forward, demanding to know the nature of the problem. There was a pause in the air. One of them made a thoughtful remark, while the other remained impassive, showing no concern. With a sharp movement, the hand cut the air, drawing attention to the approaching threat. The man in the suit looked confidently into the camera, showing a photograph that had a signature indicating a financial settlement. With a slight grin, one of the men commented on the simplicity of the hobby, mocking its banality for such a successful man. In a dimly lit room, one man grins, assures another that he doesn't need money, while the other admits that he will have to work without pay in the future. Two people stand opposite each other. Their contrast is obvious. One looks slyly, and the other, irritated, is faced with a proposal that makes him uneasy. The shadowed figure leans forward, eyes blazing with tension. He demands an answer, his voice penetrating the space with sharpness and force. A barely noticeable smile flashes across his face. Silently confirming his consent, he remains confident in his decision. A motionless body, covered in blood, lies on the ground. A man standing nearby notes the strangeness of the situation, comparing it to the circumstances they are accustomed to. A figure emerges in the shadows, its face indistinct and stained with dark spots. A voice expresses regret, followed by a chilling smile. One character leans forward slightly, hinting at hidden intentions. The other responds, making it clear that he hopes his words are reasonable. The statement emphasizes the seriousness of his passion, rejecting any attempts to consider it a simple hobby. A dark figure looms, grinning widely, the blood stains on his face standing out sharply against the darkness. During the dialogue, one character gently insists, while the other firmly demands the delivery of goods instead of money. In the darkness, ragged breathing is heard. Thoughts are carried away to fleeting moments of joy, leaving only the awareness of loss. The text highlights the importance of location, emphasizing the aesthetic significance of the scene. Lying on the ground, the character opens his eyes wide and confidently declares his feelings. The second voice enthusiastically echoes him. One of those present leans forward, exhaling with a sigh, then clarifies whether a final decision has really been made. In the semi-darkness, two figures stand opposite each other. One demands attention, the other, less confident, cautiously agrees. The woman decisively points in the direction, accompanying her words with a clear gesture. The girl suddenly falls silent, her gaze moving away as she considers the unexpected call. One character asks about the age of the interlocutor, emphasizing the hidden meaning of his words. Their glances meet, charged with tension. The girl calmly confirms that she remains silent, concentrating on keeping her secret. Four women gather together, their faces serious, preparing for an event that carries an underlying tension. The woman asks how good they are. The four men, with smug smiles, answer evasively, making it clear that their opinion remains ambiguous. The man looks at the scene with a thoughtful grin, his eyes shining with curiosity as he assesses the situation. The girl stands alone in the semi-darkness, staring at something invisible, realizing that she has never seen it before. The woman notices the interlocutor's observation, and the man carefully watches her reaction, finding the unfolding dialogue interesting. The girl looks at the other girl with doubt, wondering whether she is really as attractive as she seems to others. The man expresses doubt in his interlocutor's confidence, beads of sweat appearing on his forehead. She responds with concern, noting that the girl looks too young. A tense argument ensues, with one protesting, sweating nervously, and the other declaring without hesitation that since she is beautiful, he will take her. Two men in suits step forward, one of them gesturing, while a woman silently watches their interaction. The woman turns to her friend, asking her to keep an eye on the man, but she frivolously replies that there is no need to be so tense. A man performs a song in a karaoke bar. A woman stands next to him, and the atmosphere is lively. There are two glasses on the table, reflecting the hidden tension. One of the interlocutors demands honesty, and the other asks a question about student life. The bespectacled character smirks, as he remarks that the beauty of his interlocutor makes everything else unimportant, conveying the lightness of the moment. Two people are having a casual conversation, one reminiscing about past meetings, and the other agreeing, emphasizing their mutual understanding. A man in sunglasses compliments a woman, but soon moves on to asking questions about her current affairs, combining politeness with directness. The girl reflects on her own insecurities, imagining how her life could change if she had the means to have cosmetic surgery. One person notices that the other person is not very talkative, but the other just brushes it off, saying that it doesn't matter. The character hesitates, frowning, wondering whether to make an uncertain decision. The girl, not hiding her irritation, exclaims that she doesn't know how much longer she can endure this situation. A man weighs the risk of a recent decision, wondering whether to send it to a group of people he disdainfully calls losers. During a tense conversation, one interlocutor notices that the girl cannot make a final decision, while the other listens attentively. The man, with a slight smirk, ponders the situation, assuming that it will not cause harm to the other. His calmness emphasizes the confidence in his thoughts. The figure stands with its back turned, creating a sense of urgency. The woman, seated, senses the impending tension, her posture hinting at something disturbing. A woman lazily leans back, wondering why someone is up so early, blowing out smoke, while another explains that he is still busy. The man leans against the doorway, smiling playfully, holding a bag in his hand, his words sounding flirtatious. In dim lighting, one character jokes about another's scent, prompting curious questions and light banter among those present. The boy with disheveled hair stands silently, uncertainty reflected in his gaze as he tries to comprehend the presence before him. A man with slicked back hair confidently occupies the doorway, grinning and making an offhand remark about boredom. The woman slumps in her chair as her friend leans closer, asking about recent events. A character casually mentions training for someone else, and in response hears a humorous remark about the child's strange situation. The woman looks at the two men. One stands confidently, and the other remains in the shadows, waiting for her reaction. The man smirks, revealing his intentions. He brought someone to make a man out of him, anticipating change. The woman assesses the young man, his clothes, and notes that he reminds her of someone in an outdated suit. In a dimly lit room, one character smirks at the chance arrival, earning a sarcastic remark about the suit. The man leans closer, smirking, and suggests that it's better than a school uniform. The woman holds her cigarette thoughtfully, her gaze saying more than her words. A young man in a suit stands, doubting his choice of clothing, his hand touching his chest in indecision. The man leans towards the woman, lightly hugging her shoulders, warning her of possible troubles if she is late. In the dark room, the young man shifts his gaze, uncertainty reflected in his movements. He reacts with puzzlement to an invisible question. An unfamiliar figure peers into the room, trying to figure out its purpose. The words hint at a karaoke stage. In the soft light, a figure in formal attire stands motionless, the word "Rose" hanging next to him. The young man freezes in the dark corridor, listening to distant echoes as he hesitates before taking his next step. The character denies any responsibility for what happened, claiming that it is not his, while a voice is heard in the background. A man in glasses and a tie loudly accuses Mr. Park of the mistakes he made, while a girl nearby remains silent, watching what is happening. In the dim light of the room, a man smiles reservedly as he shares his thoughts, while a woman with a cold gaze gives him caustic advice. The girl frowns and speaks sharply, emphasizing her persistence and inflexibility. One of the characters gestures to the need for an immediate solution to the problem, emphasizing the urgency of the situation. A man and a woman meet eyes in a tense moment when the dialogue takes an unexpected turn. She hesitantly admits her inexperience, justifying herself to her interlocutor. A man in sunglasses clenches his fist, pointing his hand forward and insulting his interlocutor with harsh words. A woman, sitting on the floor, questions a man's intentions by throwing provocative questions at him. The girl flinches as a hand roughly grabs her hair. Her scream echoes throughout the room. The man tugs the girl's arm hard, demanding that she call the manager immediately, despite her reluctance to follow his order. In a narrow corridor, an adult casts a distrustful glance at a child walking next to him, who is clearly worried about something. A voice calls out loudly for Miss Lim, demanding her immediate presence, the disappointment in his tone becoming more and more clear. The girl, squatting down, reaches out her hand forward in confusion, as if trying to find support. The young man with tousled hair looks away, not hiding his confusion at the question about the stranger. One of the characters, with a smug smile, reminds us of the due reward for the service rendered. A sharp voice pierces the space, demanding silence, reinforcing what was said with a piercing gaze. In a fierce struggle, one side demands freedom, while the other continues to hold on without loosening its grip. In a verbal clash, a confrontation of characters flares up. One character notes the peculiarities of another, causing surprise in the interlocutor. The fist instantly connects with the face. The other two watch in shock. The girl gives the boy a reproachful look, doubting his ability to fight. One character defiantly questions the nature of the relationship, revealing a hint of a power struggle. Two figures look at the city lights, one of them asking a question with a hint of curiosity. One character laughs, another responds with a surprised tone. Their interaction seems easy and casual. An argument flares up. One of the participants takes the initiative, and the other irritably throws out a counter-question. The young man, covered in mud, asks with bewilderment about the reasons for his interlocutor's actions. A wide-eyed girl exclaims about her lost parents, revealing her status as a student in debt. The shadowed character stares at his interlocutor, questioning the weight of family obligations.